Good day. I am your host, Craig Winn, and this is the YAHOWAH blog. Today's program is going to be about the covenant, what it represents, how you can participate in it, what God is offering, and what he expects from us in return. We're introduced to the covenant, actually, during the end of the flood, where Noah is presented with a rainbow, 7 colors, that tell him that this is the sign of the covenant. He wasn't presented any details as to what he should do to participate in the covenant. He wasn't even told what the benefits of the covenant were, but we can infer all of them from the story. For example, the single most important aspect of why Noah was chosen was revealed by Yahweh. Do you know what it is? It wasn't that he was a preacher. It wasn't that he was religious. It wasn't that he was famous. It wasn't because he was a bigwig in the local community. Nope. It was because he disassociated from the religious and political establishment of his day. He lived set apart and separate from them. He was not religious. He was not political. He was not a social climber. He was set apart from all of that. Turns out that's the lone prerequisite of the covenant. And second, do you know why Noah benefited and was kept safe along with his family from the flood that ensued and took all of those within a Salma in the region of the Dead Sea, which is where this flood ensued? It's because he listened to what Yahweh said, and he responded, doing what God had asked. Turns out that is another of the 5 requirements of the covenant, that we listen to God and respond, doing as he asked. We're next introduced to the covenant as Abraham, his name at the time was Abram, and Sarah, her name at the time was Sarai, were walking out of Babylon. So perhaps you see the connection already. God did not approach them until they had left Babel, until they were disassociating themselves from Babel, which is the confusion that is derived by confounding people through the intermixing of truth and lies, through the integration of religion and politics. They had made the decision to leave all of that behind and to walk away, separating themselves from the religious and political culture of man. They walked away from Babylon. That is what made them accessible. That is why, of all the people on earth, Yahweh chose them, because they had made a conscious decision, an informed choice to disassociate themselves from Babel. And it is no surprise that in Yirmiyahu we read that Yahweh is pleading with his people to come out of Babylon today. So he engaged with these 2 people because they met the initial requirement of the covenant, which is to walk away from your country, from the family of man, from the things that establish countries, the very fabric of human civilization, which is the integration of religion and politics. It has always been that way. It continues to be that way. It is the very thing that we must distance ourselves from, separating ourselves from, if we wish to be part of the covenant family. I know it sounds ironic that with all these religions claiming that they hold the keys on how to be part of God's club, the opposite of what they claim is true. Rather than be religious to know God, you must be unreligious, indeed anti-religious, to know God. And you must also be apolitical. These were the initial conditions, indeed the prerequisite of the covenant. And until Abraham and Sarah had walked away from Babel, there was no contact. Once they had the contact between Yahweh and these 2 individuals, was frequent. As the covenant develops, we have Yahweh meeting with Abraham again. And the next condition of the covenant is for him to walk to Yahweh to become perfected. He did not tell Abraham to be perfect. If he had, Abraham would have failed. Abraham was not a particularly good man. Abraham was not a particularly bright man. When you read the interchange between Yahweh and Abraham, you are not impressed with this man's intelligence. And when you read what he did to his wife to enrich himself, pimping her out for sheep, it's for darn sure he was not a man of character. So, clearly, God did not ask Abraham to make himself perfect. What he asked him to do is walk to me, to be perfected. So now you must understand, how does one walk to Yahweh and become perfected? There's only one path to walk to Yahweh. It begins with the door that is labeled Passover, Pesach. The next step is through the threshold of matzah, which is where we are perfected, and I'll speak to that in just a moment. We then proceed into God's home as his children on Bokurim, which means firstborn children, where we are enriched and empowered by God. This leads to the fourth step along the way. It's the next mikre to be fulfilled. It is Shavuot. It is a harvest of multiple forms of grain, and therefore both of Goyim and Yehudim, and it is on our immediate horizon. It will take place on the 22nd of May, 2026, 7 years before Yahweh's return with the Messiah, Dod. Following that, there are 3 successive mikre that will be fulfilled together on this path to walk to God, all in year 6000 Yah, which is 2033. If you're Jewish and you are confused and think that it isn't just 9 years before year 6000 Yah, you have been played for a fool, unfortunately, by Maimonides. His reasoning was completely not only irrational, but ignorant. He did not follow what God said in the Torah because he preferred his own Talmud and his own religious ideas to what God instructed. On Towrah, there is the final harvest, this of olives and therefore of Yisraelites. Followed that next day, still Towrah, still a Shabat, by the sacrifice of the red heifer, which makes the mortal remnant of Yisrael prepared for the family reunion, which will take place on the 10th day of the 7th month, on Yom Kippurim in year 6000 Yah, October 2nd in 2033, which is the day that both Yahweh and our Messiah and King Dod will return. This then leads back to where we all began, to Sukkah, to camping out with God. Yahweh will restore the earth to the conditions experienced in Eden, which means there will be no politics. There will be no religion. There will be no religious people, no political people, no militant or military people as well, no patriots. It is just for the covenant members and those as part of the mortal remnant of Yisrael who accepted the sacrifice of the red heifer. This is the path that we walk to Yahweh. Now, since the instruction was walk to me and be perfect, become perfected, the only way to do that is to capitalize on the first 2 of the mikre. These are Moed mikre that Dod himself, our Messiah and King, fulfilled in his second of 3 lives. He fulfilled Pesach, Matzah, and Bokurim in 33 CE, which was year 4000 Yah. And on Passover, as the Passover lamb, his physical body, his bashar, served as the herald to open that door, to make it possible for us to move through this portal from being stuck in 3 dimensions and enter the 7-dimensional realm of Yahweh, and to be immortal as it relates to the 4th dimension, which is time. This is the doorway to God's home. It's the doorway out of this mortal physical existence, which is decaying all around us, and into God's presence. But to enter God's presence, we must be perfected. And the way that God went about perfecting us is through unyeasted bread, matzah. And on this day, after serving as the Passover lamb using his bashar body, Dod's nephesh soul carried our guilt, the guilt of every covenant member, of every Israelite that would avail himself or herself of the sacrifice. His soul was burdened with our guilt, and his nephesh carried our guilt into Sheol to deposit it there. And because he carried our guilt into Sheol to leave it there, it can never be seen again. Sheol is the place of ultimate separation. It's the place where there is no light. It is the place of no escape. And so by taking our guilt and putting it in Sheol on matzah, we are perfect. There is no evidence against us. Everything that we have and may inadvertently do that is inappropriate going forward has been removed from us, allowing Father and Son to perfect us. This then, of course, leads to Bikurim, where the firstborn of Yahowah, Dod, signed our adoption papers so that we could enter Yahweh's family. This is how we meet the second condition of the covenant. It is how we walk to Yahweh to become perfected. The next condition of the covenant is related to these. It says, trust and rely upon Yahweh. Well, the only way you can do that is to stop trusting and relying on your political party, on your religion, on your country, on your military, on your conspiracy, whatever it may be. You must stop relying on these inventions of man so that you can rely on the teachings and guidance of Yahweh. Now, the only place you can find these teachings, this guidance, these directions, is in his Torah and prophets. Primarily, his Torah is where he has shared with us everything we need to know about how we go about trusting and relying upon him. And that's a very interesting concept, because trust is very different than faith. Trust is very different than beliefs. A faith is expressed by someone who does not know. You believe that which you cannot prove. But when Yahweh proved his existence and proved his inspiration of the Torah and prophets through prophecy, by knowing everything from creation all the way to our return to this Garden of Eden, he proved his existence and he demonstrated his inspiration of these words. And once you know them, once you come to understand what Yahweh conveyed to us, then you are in a position to trust him. But trust requires knowledge. Reliance actually requires understanding. And the only way to go there is for you to read and come to understand the instructions that Yahweh provided in his Torah. Not in the Talmud of the rabbis, in his Torah. Now, to help you understand what God is offering in this regard, how to come to know him, I have written 35 books. They're all on the bookshelf at YadaYah.com. Yada means to know. Yah is the first part of Yahweh's name. On that bookshelf, every book is free. Start with an introduction to God. Then read through the Yada Yahowah series. Enjoy the 5 volumes of observations. And I want you to conclude with Coming Home, which are the letters that Dod wrote to us, inspired by his father. So, because these books are all based upon more accurate and complete translations of Yahweh's testimony as derived from the oldest manuscripts, particularly the Dead Sea Scrolls, you will find the truth. You will come to know God as he revealed himself. And once you know him, you can rely on him and meet the third condition of the covenant. The fourth condition that Yahweh presented to Abraham as they were developing their relationship is to closely examine and carefully consider these instructive conditions of the covenant relationship. He asked him to be observant, to use his eyes, to use his ears, to listen and to see, so that he could come to understand everything that God had shared with him. Appreciate the fact that God was now on his fourth condition of the covenant, the fourth thing that he is asking of us, that we first walk away from the Babel of religion and politics, that second, we walk to God along the path that he has provided through the Moed Mikre, so that we are perfected by him. The third is to study his testimony to the point that we can come to trust and rely on him. And the fourth is to be observant, to closely examine and carefully consider each of these, which will be 5 conditions of the covenant, so that we can benefit from the 5 benefits of the covenant. So the fourth is to be observant. It is one of the reasons that Yahweh, in the second statement that he etched in stone, after telling us, do not be religious, don't even be around religious people, don't get yourself even caught in a religious institution. He then tells us that fathers have corrupted their children to the 3rd and 4th generation, and that because of that, there will be thousands who will benefit from these terms and conditions of the covenant. Now, thousands amongst billions is 1 in a million. That's how rare it is for those who are listening to these words to capitalize on the opportunity of a lifetime, of lifetimes, plural. So that's the 4th condition of the covenant. The 5th is that Yahweh wants us to have a full appreciation of how this covenant family models the ideal human family, and how this covenant family is separated from, totally distinct from, cut apart from the world's most popular institutions, religion and politics, for example. So the 5th condition of the covenant is that we're asked to circumcise our sons on the 8th day. And by doing so, he doesn't give even an amount that you need to cut off. There's no special ritual involved. In fact, none. He just says, circumcise your sons on the 8th day, which is to cut a tiny portion of the foreskin. And the reason for that is by cutting, which is the same term he uses in establishing the covenants, karat. By cutting this foreskin, we are showing as parents that we want to raise our children to remember Yahweh, to be part of his covenant family. It's the highest calling we have here on earth. And it tells us that we understand that on the point of the male anatomy that is responsible for inseminating new life and beginning a family, that we won't forget this correlation between these things. And we appreciate how being set apart and cut away from the institutions of man sets us apart and separates us unto the family of God. That's why being circumcised is the 5th condition of the covenant. Now, for those 5 conditions, those who meet those 5 conditions, who accept those 5 conditions, who, going back to the time of Noah, listened to what Yahweh said, didn't argue with him, and opted to capitalize on his advice. Those who do so will receive the 5 benefits of the covenant. They were all delivered by father and son, working together during the fulfillment of the first 3 Moed Mikre. Moed means restoring witness to the eternal testimony, and Mikre are invitations to be called out and to meet with God. The first 3, Pesach, Matzah, and Bikurim, were not only fulfilled by David, our Messiah, the very Son of God, our returning King. It is only when you come to know why he did so, when he did so, how he did so, and the result of him fulfilling Pesach, Matzah, and Bikurim, that you can truly understand the mindset of God and the heart of his chosen Messiah. I think that the single greatest discovery in human history is when, about 2 years ago, I was able to ascertain by reading Dod's Mizmor, his letters to us, and reading through the Torah and prophets, that it was Dod who was the Messiah, who was the Son of God, and he is the one who returned to fulfill Pesach, Matzah, and Bikurim. He was the Passover lamb. His soul carried our guilt into Sheol, never to be seen again. And the firstborn of Yahweh signed our adoption papers into this covenant family on Bikurim, firstborn children. And so by doing those things, we are immortalized, living forever as a result of Pesach. We are perfected and therefore able to live in Yahweh's presence forevermore on Matzah. We are adopted into the covenant family on firstborn children, Bikurim, where God enriches us and empowers us, enlightening and emancipating us. All five represent the benefits of the covenant. So now you know. The covenant is the reason that Yahweh created the universe. It is the very reason that we exist. It is the single most important part of God's story. And there is only one of them. Those who believe that they are part of a new covenant and that their new covenant is the New Testament are not only wrong, they've been pled for fools. There is only one covenant. And when it is renewed, the only distinction between the covenant as it exists now and our participation in the covenant when it is renewed on Yom Kippurim for the benefit of Sukkah in year 6000 Yah on the 2nd and 7th of October in that year, 2033, is that the Torah that I'm sharing with you will not need someone like myself to convey it to you, because Yahweh is going to inscribe a copy of his Torah instructions inside of us, making it literally the part of the fabric of our lives, so that when we live with him and explore the universe together, we will have his guidance perfected within our being every step of the way. There is only one covenant. I have shared with you its conditions. I have shared with you its benefits. You are free to take advantage of them. You may not change them. What you do relative to these instructions will determine your fate. I am Craig Winn. I am speaking for the creator of the universe. His name is Yahweh, and this has been the Yahowah blog.